Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that honestly I didn't fully understand until I found myself right in the middle of it. Perimenopause. And I want to start by saying this up front. I am in it right now. And I did not see it coming like this. For most of my life, I've been a great sleeper. Like head hits the pillow, I'm out. No issues, no second thoughts. And suddenly, I'm waking up in the middle of the night, wide awake, mind racing, or just restless for no reason at all. Waking up feeling unrested. And I remember thinking, what is happening to me? And it's not just sleep. There are days when my mood feels all over the place. I can go from totally fine to irritated in seconds, and not just a little annoyed. I'm talking about everything feeling overwhelming. Like every little thing someone says gets under my skin in a way it never used to before. And then there are the moments when I catch myself overreacting, and I know I'm overreacting, but I still feel it just as strongly. Or I'll feel sad for no clear reason. Nothing major happened. Nothing's wrong, but there it is. And the energy piece, this one really got me. I'm someone who used to have a full tank, getting things done, staying motivated, and now some days I just don't have it. It's like my body and brain are not on the same page. And then there are those days, and if you know, you know, where I just want to scream because everything everyone says feels so annoying. And I think to myself, is it me? Is it them? What is going on? And that's really what brought me here to this conversation, because for a while I thought maybe it was just me. Maybe I was just off. Maybe I needed to push through it. But I'm learning I'm not alone, not even close. And I also want to say this conversation is for everyone. It's for women of all ages, whether you're in it, approaching it, or years away from it, because understanding what's coming matters. Having a plan means everything. And it's also for men, because if you love a woman, a partner, a friend, a sister, a colleague, a wife, understanding what's happening to her changes everything. It brings patience and empathy and support in a way that can make a real difference. So that's what's been so encouraging and honestly such a relief, is that women are finally talking about this openly, honestly, without whispering about it. And even more importantly, medical professionals are starting to talk about it more too. There's more awareness, more research, and more support than there used to be. Your Daily Dose podcast is supported by Often Crop Insurance, a family-operated crop insurance agency serving farmers across North Carolina and the Atlantic region since the 1950s. Often Crop Insurance is built on trust and a deep understanding of rural communities. Just as this podcast helps patients better understand their health and navigate care with confidence, Often Crop Insurance supports agricultural families with simple conversations and honest service. Today we're talking about something that way more of us are going through than anyone admits, but almost nobody really explains: perimenopause. And before you tune me out thinking that's not for me, I'm not there yet, that's later on, hang on, because this can start earlier than most of us think. And a lot of what women experience in their late 30s and 40s, it's perimenopause. But no one really told us that. So today, we're just going to talk about it like friends. No weird medical lecture, no shame, just real information in normal language. Okay, so medically, perimenopause means around menopause. It's the transitional phase before menopause. In plain language, it's the years when your hormones start changing before your periods stop completely. And those hormones, mainly estrogen and progesterone, don't just slowly fade away. They go up and down, sometimes wildly. Think of it less like a gentle slope and more like a chaotic roller coaster. And we're on a roller coaster we didn't have a chance to even decide we wanted to ride. So let's take a minute to talk about these two hormones. You've probably heard about them, but maybe no one ever really explained them clearly: estrogen and progesterone. Because once you understand what these two are actually doing in your body, a lot of things start to make sense. So let's start with estrogen. It's often thought of as the main female hormone, but it does so much more than people realize. It helps regulate your menstrual cycle, but beyond that, it plays a big role in your brain, your mood, your energy, and even your memory. Estrogen also helps keep your bones strong, supports your heart health, and keeps tissues like your skin and vaginal lining healthy. It even plays a role in sleep and temperature regulation. So, when estrogen levels are steady, many women feel more like themselves, clear headed, more emotionally balanced, and physically comfortable. But when estrogen starts to fluctuate, as it does in perimenopause, that's when things can feel off. You might notice mood swings, trouble sleeping, brain fog, or even hot flashes. That's not random. That's your body responding to changing estrogen levels. Now let's talk about progesterone. If estrogen is more of the activator, progesterone is often the calming hormone. Progesterone helps prepare the body for pregnancy, but it also has a natural calming effect on the brain. It can support better sleep, reduced anxiety, and help you feel more grounded. It also balances out estrogen. These two hormones are meant to work together, kind of like a system of checks and balances. When progesterone levels are steady, you may feel more relaxed and able to handle stressful situations. But here's what's important: during perimenopause, progesterone is often the first hormone to drop. And when that happens, you lose some of that calming effect. So now, not only is estrogen fluctuating, but there's less progesterone to balance it out. And that combination can lead to things like irritability, anxiety, disrupted sleep, and feeling emotionally overwhelmed. So, if you've ever thought, why do I feel like I'm not myself lately? This is a big part of the reason why. It's not in your head, it's hormonal. And understanding that is really powerful, because once you know what's happening in your body, you can start to respond to it with more awareness, more compassion, and better support. This phase can last anywhere from a few years to even 10 plus years. I don't tell you that to scare you, but to inform you. And during that time, you might notice that your periods suddenly change: heavier, lighter, closer together, further apart. You also have hot flashes, that sudden heat wave from the inside out comes out of nowhere. Trouble sleeping, mood swings or anxiety, brain fog, like you're walking into a room and forgetting why, and lower sex drive or lower libido. Weight changes, especially around the middle. And here's the part that messes with people: these symptoms don't always show up all at once. They can come and go, shift around, and feel totally random. So, a lot of women don't connect the dots. A lot of women in this stage think, why am I suddenly anxious? Why am I tired all the time? I'm sleeping 8 hours. Why do I feel just not like myself? And the answer is often hormonal changes. But no one told us that. They don't even tell us it's a possibility. Instead, we blame stress or aging or even ourselves. And that confusion, it's unnecessary, because this is a normal biological transition, not a personal failure. Perimenopause arrives quietly for most of us until it doesn't. It starts in small shifts: sleep that isn't restful, moods that feel closer to the surface, cycles that no longer follow the rules. And then over time, it becomes something bigger, not just a physical transition, but a life transition, one that often collides with a very full, very demanding chapter of adulthood. Because for many women, perimenopause doesn't happen in isolation. It shows up right when life is already asking a lot of us. This is the season when our children are often growing up and beginning to leave home. The house that was once full of noise and schedules and chaos starts to quiet. And that quiet can feel like relief some days and like grief on others. There's pride, of course, in our kids growing up, but also a sense of who am I now? That doesn't always get spoken out loud. And at the same time, many of us are stepping into a new role, caregiving to our own parents or loved ones. The people who once cared for us may now need help navigating their own health challenges, memory challenges, or even daily life. It can feel like a reversal that's both meaningful and overwhelming. So here we are, caught between generations, supporting children as they step into independence, while also sometimes supporting parents who may be losing theirs. And layered on top of all of that is perimenopause. The physical changes alone can be disoriented. Hormones fluctuate unpredictably, affecting sleep, energy, concentration, and our mood. And one day you feel like yourself and you're so excited. And then the next day, everything feels just a little harder or a lot harder. You might find yourself walking into a room and forgetting why you're there, struggling to find words that used to come easily. Let me share a personal story. I'm 52 and I have been experiencing perimenopause and perimenopause symptoms for about 2 years now. Just the other day, I was walking in my neighborhood and my husband and I stopped to talk to a neighbor. She asked me what street we lived on, and I just stared at her. I knew what street I lived on, but the name was gone. I felt so foolish, and thankfully, my husband knew what was happening, and so he quickly told her our street. Later, we were walking back and past her, and I stopped and I told her that I wanted to explain why I could not tell her the name of my street. I shared that I was experiencing menopause, and she immediately looked at me and said, "Oh, that is totally fine. I have done the same thing and I understand." And in that moment of transparency, we connected. And you know what? I could tell she really did understand. She went on to say that recently she was at the doctor's office, and when asked her own phone number, she went blank and could not remember it. This is what we should be doing. When we are open and honest, it breaks barriers and we gain connection and support. And yet, despite all of this, life doesn't slow down for us. Most women in perimenopause are still working full time, like myself. Careers are often at a peak, more responsibility, more leadership, more pressure to perform. There are deadlines to meet, people to manage, expectations to uphold. One of the most challenging parts of perimenopause has definitely been for me brain fog. I have had a career in education for over 29 years, and I have always been on top of my game. I'm organized and I can talk or present at the drop of a hat. That is until perimenopause. There are days when everything clicks and I am just fine, but then there are other days when I cannot focus. I cannot remember simple things that I have explained to others for years. So here's what I'm doing. First, I'm praying about my anxiety around this. I'm praying for clarity and for God to give me the words to speak in important situations, in conversations. But another is that I often stop when I'm stuck and explain that I'm having a menopause moment. And you know what? Each time I do, people understand, especially women my age or older. We would share any other health issue. Why not menopause? And beyond work, there's everything else: the invisible labor, the planning, organizing, remembering, anticipating. The meals, except in my house, when my husband is our chef and meal planner, the check ins, the emotional support, the things that I've always done, the things that no one necessarily sees, but keep everything running. The difference now is that I'm doing all of it while my body and my mind are shifting in ways I didn't fully prepare for. It can feel like you're carrying the same load you always have, but with less energy, less patience, and less margin for error. And that can be incredibly frustrating. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from this stage of life. It's not just physical, it's not just being tired physically, it's mental and emotional fatigue. It's the feeling of being needed in many directions at once, while we also are trying to figure out what we need. Because somewhere in all of this, there's still you and still me, not just a mother, a daughter, a partner, an employee, but as a person who's changing and evolving and moving into a new phase of life. And that part often gets overlooked. Perimenopause has traditionally been framed as something to get through, a problem to manage, a list of symptoms to fix, to notice what still fits in our lives and what doesn't, to recognize where we've been and where we might have been overextending ourselves, to begin sometimes for the first time to ask, what do I actually need? That question can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because many of us have spent decades prioritizing others, being reliable, being capable, being the one who holds everything together. And we're still those things, but this stage of life invites a shift, not always from caring, but toward including ourselves in that care. That might mean setting boundaries that feel new, saying no when you would have said yes, delegating things you've always handled on your own, maybe letting go of the expectation that you can or should do everything the way you always have. It might mean acknowledging that your energy is not unlimited and that it's okay to protect it. It might mean asking for help, even if you're not used to doing that. And it might mean redefining what strength looks like. Because strength at this stage isn't about pushing through no matter what, it's about adapting, resilience, listening, responding to what your body and your life are telling you. There's also something important to name here: the emotional complexity of this time. You might feel pride and loss as your children become independent. You might feel love and stress as you care for someone else. You might feel gratitude for your career and also exhaustion from its demands. You might feel moments of confidence and moments of deep uncertainty, all in the same day. None of this is contradictory. It's layered and it's human. The challenge is that much of this experience is invisible. From the outside, it may look like you're doing what you've always done: showing up, managing responsibilities, keeping things moving. But on the inside, there's a lot shifting. That's why it's so important to create space to acknowledge it, to talk about it with people who understand, to give language to what you're experiencing, whether that's with friends, support groups, or professionals. Because when we don't name it, it can start to feel like we're alone in it. And we're not. There are countless women navigating this exact intersection of life, perimenopause, changing family dynamics, caregiving roles, and career demands. It's not a small thing, it's a significant life passage. And like any other transition, it deserves attention, compassion, and support. There's also an opportunity here, one that doesn't erase the challenges, but exists alongside them. This stage of life can be a time of recalibration. I love that. A time to take stock of where you've been and where you want to go next. A time to reconnect with parts of yourself that may have been set aside for a long time. A time to begin shaping the next chapter of your life with more intention. That might look like small changes, protecting your time, prioritizing rest, making space for things that bring you joy. Or it may look like bigger shifts, reconsidering work, relationships, or how you spend your energy. There's no one right way to move through this, but there is value in recognizing that this is a transition, not just something happening to you, but something you're moving through. And movement implies direction, even when it feels slow, even when it feels uncertain. You're not standing still, you're evolving. So if you find yourself in this stage feeling stretched, tired, emotional, or just different than you used to be, you're not imagining it. There are real changes happening both inside you and around you. And it makes sense that it feels like a lot. The goal isn't to handle it perfectly, it's to move through it with awareness, to give yourself permission to adjust, to honor both the responsibilities you carry and the person you're becoming. Because we're always changing, we're always evolving. I'd like to take a moment to thank Brian Daly of Miller Grant and Company for being a sponsor of Your Daily Dose. If you're thinking about making a move in Central Florida, you need more than just a realtor. You need someone who truly knows the area and genuinely cares about your next chapter. That's where Brian Daly of Miller Grant and Company comes in. He specializes in Central Florida properties and has lived in nearly every corner of the region. From the heart of Orlando to the surrounding neighborhoods and communities, he understands what makes each area unique: the schools, the lifestyle, the restaurants, the hidden gems, and the places that truly feel like home. Maybe you're thinking of relocating to Central Florida. Brian can guide you every step of the way, helping you find the home you've always wanted. Genuine, knowledgeable, and committed to serving you, Brian Daly is ready to help you turn the key to your next home. Contact Brian at 919-222-0893 or email him at brian.daly@millergrantandco.com. Because this phase of life, challenging as it can be, is also meaningful. It's a bridge between who you've been and who you're becoming. And while it may not always feel graceful, it is deeply significant. You're holding a lot right now, and that matters. So does how you care for yourself within it. Let's be real. When do we ever sit down and openly talk about perimenopause or menopause? We talked about puberty, getting your first period, pregnancy, having babies. There are books, classes, even parties, entire industries built around these stages. But perimenopause, it's like it just disappears from the conversation. And it really makes no sense because half the population goes through it. Millions of women are in it right now with me and maybe you. Part of the silence comes from how society treats aging in women, like it's something to hide or be ashamed of. But another big reason is lack of education. We weren't taught this, not in school, not at the doctor's office, not even from older generations. Sometimes because they didn't have the language either. Just last year, my mother, who is 79, and myself, who's 52, had our first conversation about menopause. It was great, or I thought it was. I told her I was in perimenopause, and we just began talking. She shared her experience, which I appreciated, but didn't really know much about in detail. I just remembered her not being herself, and then she got some pills from her doctor, and she was better. What I loved was that she shared how she wasn't sure what was happening to her and that her doctor didn't really explain it, but instead gave her hormone therapy drugs. And of course, she took them because she was so desperate to feel like herself again. I understand that. And it was so great that we had this conversation. But here's the question: why is it that women haven't been talking to younger women and younger generations? Well, it's simple. It's because no one talked to them. We were told to look out because someone was going through the change, as if it were a curse, instead of actually understanding what these women were going through. Now, my daughter, who is 22, has learned more about perimenopause and menopause than she would probably like. But oh well, I want her to fully understand what is going on in my body and mind. And I also want her to be aware and not afraid of this time in her life and health. Rating. Even though OBGYNs or doctors are experts in women's health, many of them don't get a lot of training in menopause medicine. And this includes perimenopause. We're talking limited hours during their education. So, what happens? Women go in and say, I'm not sleeping. I feel anxious all the time. My periods are weird. And they might hear that's normal. Your labs look fine. Maybe it's stress. Sometimes they're offered antidepressants or told to wait it out. Now, those treatments can be helpful. And for some people, that works. But if the root cause is hormonal changes, that part needs to be explained too. Otherwise, women leave feeling dismissed or even more confused than they were before they entered the office. There are doctors who specialize in menopause, but a lot of women have to go looking for them. It's not the first hot flash or the first sleepless night. It's the moment they realize they're not being heard. You go to the doctor because something feels off. Maybe it's your sleep. You're exhausted, but wired at night. Maybe it's your mood. You feel more anxious than you normally did, more irritable, or just not like yourself. Or it could be brain fog, weight changes, heart palpitations, or even a cycle that makes no sense. You're trying to explain it. You're trying to put words to something that's hard to describe. And instead of feeling understood and heard, you feel dismissed. You might be told your labs look normal, or that's just stress, or this is a normal part of aging. And while none of those statements are entirely untrue, they often miss the point completely because what you're experiencing may be common, but that doesn't mean it's insignificant. And it certainly doesn't mean that it should be ignored. For many women, this is where the frustration begins. You leave the doctor's office or the appointment with more questions than answers, maybe even doubting yourself, wondering if you're overreacting, wondering if this is just something you have to live with. Well, deep down, we know something has changed, and you know you don't feel like yourself. And I get that. That gap between what you're experiencing and what is being acknowledged is incredibly difficult. It can make you feel invisible. And over time, it can lead to something heavier, feeling lost. Because if the professionals you're turning to for guidance and help aren't connecting the dots, where do you go from there? Perimenopause is still widely misunderstood, even within the medical community. Hormones fluctuate in ways that don't always add up, and they show up differently on different standard tests. Symptoms can be inconsistent, unpredictable, and easy to attribute to something else. Hard to measure doesn't mean not real, and yet many women are left to figure it out on their own. They start researching late at night, trying to piece together information. They compare notes with friends. They scroll through articles, forums, and social media, looking for something, anything that sounds like what they're going through. And often they find it there before they find it in their doctor's office. That realization can be both validating and a little unsettling. Because on one hand, it's a relief to know you're not alone, but on the other, it raises a difficult question. Why did I have to find this out myself? That question can turn into frustration and sometimes into hopelessness. Because when you're not sleeping well, when your mood feels unpredictable, when your energy is low and your body feels unfamiliar, you're already in a vulnerable place. To then feel dismissed and minimized on top of that can be deeply discouraging. It can make you hesitate to seek help again. It can make you think, what's the point? And that's where it becomes more than just a medical issue. It becomes an emotional issue. Feeling unheard over time can chip away at your confidence, not just in the healthcare system, but in your own instincts. You might start second guessing what you're actually feeling. You might downplay your symptoms. You might stop advocating for yourself. And that's a heavy place. It's a heavy place I don't want you to be because you deserve care that listens. You deserve conversations that take your experience seriously. You deserve more than being told, just get through it or this shall pass. The reality is, perimenopause is a significant transition. It affects your body, your mind, your relationships, your work, every part of your life. And it deserves attention that reflects that. The good news is that awareness is growing. Women are talking about perimenopause and menopause. More conversations are everywhere. More providers and healthcare workers are becoming educated in this area because women are speaking up and they're sharing their experiences and they're expecting more. And in this space, many women have to advocate strongly for themselves. And that can feel exhausting, especially when you're already depleted. So if you've had that experience, if you've walked out of an appointment feeling dismissed, confused, or alone, it's not something to brush off. It does matter. Your experience matters. And while it may take persistence, there are providers who will listen and who understand. There are approaches that take a more comprehensive view of what you're going through. Sometimes it means asking more questions. Sometimes it means seeking a second, third, fourth opinion. And sometimes it means finding a practitioner or a physician who specializes in this stage of life. They're out there. None of that should be as hard as it is, but it doesn't mean it's not worth it because feeling understood can make a profound difference, not just in the care you receive, but in how you feel moving through this phase of life. There is a certain kind of relief that comes from someone saying, yes, this makes sense. And yes, there are ways to support you. That validation alone lifts a huge weight. It can shift you from feeling lost to feeling oriented again, from feeling hopeless to feeling like there's a path forward. We've got a plan. Perimenopause is already a complex and demanding time. You shouldn't have to fight to be believed on top of all that. And if you have been, it's okay to acknowledge how hard that has been because it is hard and it deserves to be recognized. Now we're going to dive into how perimenopause affects relationships. This part doesn't get talked about enough because perimenopause can affect your relationships in negative ways. Not only because women are overreacting or any of those things, but because their bodies are actually changing. Hormonal shifts can affect a lot of things, and we've talked about them today. Your mood, your energy, your sleep, your sexual desire or libido. Now imagine dealing with all of that without knowing why, and your partner doesn't understand either. That can lead to misunderstandings, feeling separate or distant, frustration on both sides. There's been more conversations lately about how midlife transitions, including hormonal changes, perimenopause, can play a role in relationship stress and even divorce. Not as the only cause, but as a factor when no one understands what's happening. Education makes a huge difference here. I want to touch on something that doesn't get talked about enough, but it really matters. And that's how perimenopause can affect your sex life and your intimate relationship. Because when your hormones start to shift, it's not just about mood or sleep. It can impact your desire, your comfort, and connection. Sometimes there can be dryness or discomfort, or it just takes longer to feel interested or engaged. And if you don't understand what's happening, it's easy to misinterpret that. You might think something is wrong with you, or your partner may feel confused or even rejected. But this isn't about a lack of love or attraction. It's about real physical and emotional changes happening in your body. That's why understanding perimenopause is so important because it allows you to talk about it openly without blame or shame. It creates space for honesty, for patience, and for finding new ways to connect that work for the both of you. Because intimacy doesn't have to disappear, it just might need to evolve. And when both partners understand what's happening, it can actually strengthen the relationship instead of creating this distance. When couples understand this is a physical hormonal transition, it becomes something you can navigate together, not something that pulls you apart. Perimenopause is often talked about in terms of symptoms like hot flashes, sleep disruption, mood changes. And while those are very real parts of the experience, they don't tell the whole story because this stage of life isn't only about what's changing physically. It's also a time of learning, of reflection, and in many ways of rediscovering the people around us and ourselves within those relationships. By the time perimenopause begins, most of us have been in our roles for a long time. We've been partners, parents, friends, colleagues, often putting energy into maintaining those relationships, sometimes without pausing to notice how they've evolved or changed. But this phase has a way of bringing things to the surface. You may notice that your needs are shifting. Your tolerance for stress might be different, and your emotional responses may feel stronger or less predictable. Things you once brushed off may now feel more significant, and that can impact how you show up in your relationships. At first, that can feel unsettling. You might think, why am I reacting like this? Or why does this feel harder than it used to? But there's another way to look at that. What if this isn't just disruption, but information? Information about what you need now in this stage of life. Information about what's working in your relationships and what might need attention. Perimenopause can act almost like a spotlight. It highlights patterns that have been there all along, but were easier to overlook when you had more energy, more patience, more emotional bandwidth. And while that can be uncomfortable, it also creates an opportunity to reconnect with honesty. And with friends, this might mean moving beyond surface level. It might mean sharing what you're actually experiencing, even if it feels vulnerable, talking about the fatigue, the mood shifts, the mental load. And often when one person opens up, others do too. You realize you're not the only one navigating this. There's a kind of relief in that shared understanding, a sense of, oh, it's not just me. And that can deepen friendships in a meaningful way. And with family, especially our adult children, this stage can also shift dynamics. As they become more independent, there's an opportunity to relate to each other differently, not just as caregiver and child, but as two adults with their own experiences. Being open about what you're going through can help bridge that transition. It doesn't mean putting everything on them, but it does mean allowing them to see you as a whole person, not just the role you've always played. And then there are our partners, our spouses, or whoever you share your life with. This is one of the most important relationships to bring into the conversation because perimenopause can affect not just how you feel, but how you connect. Energy levels are changing. Sleep disruptions can affect patience and mood, and physical symptoms can impact intimacy. So, emotional shifts can create misunderstandings if they're not talked about. Without communication, it's easy for both people to feel confused. One person may be thinking, what's happening to me? And the other will be thinking, what's happening to us? That's why openness matters so much. Sharing what you're experiencing, how you're feeling, even when you don't have all the answers. This helps create understanding. It turns something that could feel isolating into something that can be navigated together. It allows your partner to support you, not just guess from the outside. It creates a space for both of you to adapt as things change. The same is true in the workplace. We don't always think about perimenopause in relationship or relation to colleagues, but it plays a role there too. You may find that your focus, energy, or stress tolerance fluctuates. You might need more flexibility or simply more awareness from the people that you work with. Now, not every workplace feels safe for those conversations. I get that completely. But when it is possible, even small moments of openness can make a difference. It might be as simple as acknowledging that you're going through a phase that's affecting your sleep or concentration. That kind of transparency can reduce pressure, the pressure to appear as though everything is exactly the same, when in reality, it's very different. And often it fosters empathy because the reality is many people are either going through this, have gone through it, or will go through it, or love someone who is going through it. The more it's talked about, the less isolating it becomes. And that's really at the heart of all of this connection. Perimenopause can feel isolating when it's Perimenopause can feel isolating when it's kept private. When you're trying to manage everything internally without letting others see what's happening, and it becomes something different when it's shared. Not something that defines you, but something that's a part of your current experience and something that others can support you through. That support matters. Let me tell you, from friends who listen and say, I get it, from family members who offer understanding and patience, from partners like my husband, who is amazing and who stands alongside me, even when things feel uncertain. No one moves through this stage of life completely unchanged, but you don't have to move through it alone. Because when we allow ourselves to be seen fully, honestly, and even imperfectly, we create space for deeper connection. And in a time of so much change, that connection can be one of the most grounding, supportive forces that we have. Okay, let's talk about something that seems so obvious when you say it out loud, and yet somehow we've overlooked it for generations. Most of us learned about puberty in a classroom. Maybe it was awkward. Maybe it was rushed. I know it was during my middle school PE. Maybe it made you uncomfortable, but it happened. Someone stood at the front of a room and explained what was coming. Now, we didn't want to hear it, but we did. They told us that our body was going to change, that our hormones would shift, that our emotions might feel bigger, that our cycle as women would begin, and what that meant. We were given language, we were given some context, we were given at least some sense of, okay, this is normal, this is going to happen to everybody. Other people are going through this too. Now imagine if we did the same thing for perimenopause. Wouldn't that be amazing? Imagine if somewhere in our 30s or early 40s, there was a class or a conversation that said, here's what's coming next. Here's what might change. Here's what's normal. And here's when to reach out for support. Instead of what happens for most of us, we're caught completely off guard. Yeah, we know it's coming, but not when and to us. One day things just feel different. We're lying awake at 3 a.m., exhausted but unable to sleep. We're snapping at people you love and then wondering, where did that come from? I'm so sorry. You walk into a room and forget why you're there, but a lot, and you lose your train of thought mid sentence. Then your periods change shorter, longer, heavier, unpredictable. You might feel more anxious than you've ever felt before, or more emotional, or just not like yourself. And no one has told you this would be part of perimenopause. So instead of thinking, oh, this is a transition my body's going through, many women think, what is wrong with me? That gap between what we experience and what we've been taught, it matters more than we realize, because when you don't have information, you fill in the blanks. And often those blanks get filled with worry, confusion, and self-doubt. We prepare girls for their first period, but we don't prepare women for when their cycles start changing. We send women home after childbirth with a follow-up appointment or two, but rarely with long-term education about what hormonal transitions later in life might look like. There's no standard next chapter conversation, no roadmap that says, here's what your body may do in your 40s and beyond. So women end up piecing it together on their own. This is why education is so important, because when a woman understands what's happening in her body, everything changes. She can ask better questions. Instead of saying, I just feel off, she can say, I'm noticing sleep disruption, mood changes, and cycle irregularity. Could this be perimenopause? That's a very different conversation. There are a few really simple, approachable places to begin. One great resource is the Menopause Society. This is a trusted, evidence-based organization that focuses specifically on menopause. And remember, perimenopause is the phase into menopause. Their website has straightforward information about symptoms, treatment options, and what's actually happening in your body, without all the noise or misinformation that you might find elsewhere online. Find sources that break down myths and explain what's normal and helps you feel a lot less alone in the process. And another really powerful place to start is something less formal, and that's online communities. There are websites, there are spaces where women are sharing their real experiences, what they're feeling, what's helped them, and what hasn't. And sometimes just seeing someone else put into words exactly what you've been feeling and experiencing can be incredibly validating. If millions of women are going through this, why aren't we talking about it more? That's the bigger question here. Why aren't we talking about women's health more? And maybe the answer is simple. We just start talking ourselves, with friends, with our partners, with our doctors, because this isn't something to hide or feel embarrassed about. It's part of life. I want to thank you for being here today. I hope that this episode has helped you understand things a little better. Please send it to someone who might need it too. Let's make this conversation normal. Thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next time.